Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. Today's episode, I am talking about my experience using Rent the Runway for 1 year. Before I get into the content, I want to read an email that we received here at Prep Dish from subscriber Amrita. She says, I have to say I am so impressed with what you've created to help busy moms and professionals eat healthy and stay in control of their schedule. I am not a mom, but I'm an executive working easily 12 plus hours a day with 3 fur babies and a husband who tends to snack consistently on junk. I've come to enjoy prep day, timing myself and coming up under the 2-hour mark, which is phenomenal. I used to spend 5 to 6 hours cooking for the week, and that's after finding the recipes and going grocery shopping. I have told everyone I know about your site. I've even simultaneously tried HelloFresh, and both my husband and I were not impressed by them at all. We are lactose intolerant, and your dairy substitutes and tips help a lot. So far, your emails and tips have answered all my questions. You all are fabulous. You've allowed me to enjoy my Sundays again. Amrita, thank you so much for sharing. I always love hearing how people are using Prep Dish in their life. I love that it is saving you so much time, that you've calculated that before you were spending up to 6 hours and you've cut that down to like less than a third, especially after finding all the recipes, all that. So thank you for sharing that. I also love that you're timing yourself. This is, I don't know if you saw, I give this tip out. So maybe it's a tip that you pulled from our emails or somewhere else, but I think it's great that you are timing yourself and coming up under that 2-hour mark. If you are listening to this and wanting to try Prep Dish, see if it can save you some time throughout your week, go to prepdish.com/MPM. That's short for Meal Prep Monday. And you get to try out the service for 2 weeks for free. See if it's a fit for you. Maybe set a timer, see how long that prep takes, and go from there. But yeah, 2 weeks and no strings attached or anything like that. So prepdish.com/MPM if you want to try it out. Okay, let's get into the content for today. So this is wrapping up our home management series, and these next 2 episodes are a little bit of a stretch, but I do think they fall under the category of home management, specifically like clothing management and making sure your closet is streamlined, and you'll find out more why as I get into the episode. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you some background, but then I'm going to go into the 4 main uses that I got out of this service, and then the 4 perks that I saw, and then wrap up with some tips if you decide to use Rent the Runway or a similar service, how I helped make sure it worked, well for me. Okay, so Rent the Runway, in the past, I always thought of it as a service to rent like fancy ball gowns. Like if you're going to a black tie event and instead of spending hundreds of dollars on a fancy dress, you could just rent it, wear it once, and then send it back. That is a service that they offer. But on top of that, they now have this like monthly subscription where you can, yes, rent fancy dresses, but you can rent clothing that you would wear on a day-to-day basis, whether that's for an event or just, going to work or meeting up with girlfriends or going on a date night. So I started it out like a year ago, and I believe it was in December because I did have some events that month. So I think I rented like a few dresses to wear to my, holiday parties that I had in December. But I really liked the idea of trying it out just for my, monthly wardrobe. So as I got into it, thought, gosh, maybe I could give myself a year to try the service out and see how it works for me. But part of that commitment was, okay, if I use this, I'm going to try and not really buy new clothes for the year. And this was happening at the same time as we were going through our renovation. So with our renovation, that included my closet. I had moved my closet from upstairs into our shop. And in doing so, tried to really get rid of as much clothing as possible and didn't want to add to my wardrobe when I didn't even have a closet to put clothes in. So it kind of worked out timing wise to have this all happen within the same year. The way the service works is I was on like the lowest level, I believe, and I got to pick 5 items. And for me, a lot of times I would do dresses because you could kind of stretch them more. Like, a dress is kind of a whole outfit. If you do, a top and a pair of pants, that's 2 items. Sometimes I would do skirts because I could pair it with a tank top I already had. But I would get 5 items each month. You can always add on, or there's, higher levels and things like that. I think there's one, two where you get 2 shipments a month. I found for me, 1 month was all I needed. But I would pick out the 5 items I wanted. They would send them, and then I, got to use them for the month. And then when I was done, I would send them back. So the main 4 uses that I got out of these outfits, one was just like kind of going out, like meeting up with girlfriends, going to work events, going on a date night, just anything where I needed to get dressed and be pulled together. It was nice to have an outfit that felt, up to date and stylish and pulled together. So, I got a lot of use just in my kind of week to week going out appointments. And then the second one, and this was maybe one of the probably my favorite use of it or application of it, was travel. So when I had a trip coming up, I would get outfits for that trip, and it made packing so much easier. I often would just pack these items and nothing else. And especially if my trip was sort of off season. So last year we went to Belize in January or February. And for that month, I got, a sundress. I did a little romper that was super cute, but not something I probably would have splurged on just because it's kind of unique. And I don't think I would have worn it a lot over and over, but I did wear it on the trip and loved it. I actually ended up renting it again later in the year for another trip because I liked it so much. So for travel, it worked really well. We also had a trip on the East Coast, like a road trip that we did, and I rented a coat, which was nice, and a sweater. I don't have as many warm weather clothes, living in Texas. So it was nice to get some clothes for that trip as well. And again, just packing was simple. And actually that trip, I had the shipment sent because it kind of landed on when we were arriving. I had the shipment actually sent to my sister-in-law's house because that's where we started our trip. So that was kind of nice that it was sent directly there. So I didn't even have to pack my clothes. They just arrived there at her house. The clothes were helpful for when I did videos for work. I mean, kind of a bonus. A lot of, if I'm doing interviews, it's from the neck up usually. So it's not as important, but for some of the Instagram reels and things like that, it was just nice to have something new and fresh to wear. And then of course, if I did have an event, so if there was some sort of wedding or event that required a nicer dress, it was fun to always be able to try something new and, experiment with different styles and things like that. So those were the main uses that I got out of my shipments. And then the 4 perks that I found in using this service. So number 1 was less decisions. If I got a call and had to go meet up with girlfriends, it was so nice to not have to look through my closet and dig through all these things. It's like, okay, here's kind of my 4 or 5 options for this month. And it just made it really easy, especially again with the travel and the packing. I just kind of had those 5 items. I have stopped the service. So as most of you probably know, we had a new baby in December, and that was kind of the end of my year mark. So I stopped the service. I am thinking I'm going to pick it back up at some point because I did get a call a few weeks ago, and you've probably heard me on Prep Dish talk about Dr. Elisa Song and Dr. Brighton, some of these people from a mastermind that I've been in. They were all in Austin for an event, and they called me up to come in and meet up for dinner. And I was like, man, I really wish I had, one of my Rent the Runway outfits that I could just throw on. And instead I'm kind of like digging through my closet, figuring out what to wear. Okay, so that was 1 perk. Number 2 perk, I really stuck to not buying a lot of clothes. I bought a few workout, yoga pants and workout tops and things like that. But I really, other than that, did not buy a lot of new clothes. So that was a real bonus. I'm not a big into buying a lot of clothes anyway. I'll get more into that later, but I really cut back a lot on how much I spent on clothing. So that was great. The 3rd perk was my closet is so much smaller now because not only was I not buying new clothes, but I challenged myself to come into my closet every few months and continue to weed out those items that I wasn't wearing, which ended up being a lot, more items because I was relying primarily on these shipments. So it made it easier to go into my closet and just continue to streamline and downsize what's in there. And that just makes the decision-making, even if I'm not using Rent the Runway, it makes the decision-making process that much easier. And then the 4th perk, I'm going to call it confidence, but just, being able to feel stylish and have kind of those quote unquote cool clothes. I'm not a big fashionista, but I think every girl loves feeling put together and like you're, wearing some nice clothes. And so it really just helped with that and made the getting dressed part of the day so much easier. So I want to wrap up with some tips. One is I've kind of hinted at this, but I think a service like this is actually even better for people that don't care as much about fashion. I've talked to a friend who's really into fashion. Like she loves to put together outfits and go shopping. And, I've talked to her about this and she doesn't really think that she would enjoy it. And I agree, right? Like she gets a lot of pleasure into going into a store and buying outfits and knowing the brands and doing all of that. And I don't love going into stores and shopping and all of that. But of course, I love being put together and looking stylish. So this service was great for me because it made something I don't enjoy doing just that much easier. But yes, if you're someone that really is into fashion, then, it may not actually be as fun for you. I also loved getting rid of the clothes at the end of the month. I feel like I kind of got my use out of them and was ready to move on. And some people, maybe they want to hold on to those things and continue to mix and match and create outfits, but I'm not into the mixing and matching and creating outfits. So for me, getting rid of them at the end of the month was great. And then let's see. Oh, I wanted another tip. If you do end up deciding to use the service is to always read the reviews, especially on sizing. So one downside, at least for the level I was on, I think maybe if you pay more a month, you can send back and get new sizes. But for mine, you're kind of stuck with the size you ordered. So I found it really important to read the reviews. The reviews are really good because they include the weight, height, cup size, all of those things. So I could read through and get a sense of how I should size the item. And even looking at pictures and how the, outfit or clothing item fit gave me a good idea of whether or not I even wanted to rent that, just by being able to read the reviews, see the real life photos of, someone in a bathroom, like taking a selfie. Like those photos and reviews were really helpful, especially if I could find someone that had a similar body type to mine. It just let me know, one, if it was a good option for me, and then two, which size, like should I size up? Should I size down? Is it true to size? But doing that work really paid off. I think there was maybe 1 month where 2 items didn't fit. And that was kind of a bummer because then I only had 3 items for the month. But with it, you can always add on items. There was 1 month where I added an extra item because we had kind of more going on. And then there was a month in the summer where we did 2 back-to-back trips and I thought I would use the same shipment. But after the first trip, I realized like 2 of the dresses that I got were more kind of like date night and things like that. And the next trip was more family focused. So I ended up doing a second shipment just to get a whole new thing. Like I'd kind of gotten tired of wearing the one set of clothes and switched to the, getting a second shipment. But again, like a second shipment is the same price of buying, say, like one sundress or something like that. So it really feels like a splurge and an indulgence. But from my perspective, the price is not as indulgent as it feels. So that was my experience. As I'm sure you can tell from listening to this, I really did enjoy it. I will probably get back to it later this year. I was looking on their website to see if I have like a code or anything. There is a $30 savings if I enter your email address. So if you can't find a better deal than that just by Googling, feel free to on Instagram or shoot us an email, theinfo@prepdish.com, and we can add you in and I can get you the $30 savings, but you might be able to find that same savings online. I'm not doing this as a big, affiliate push or anything like that, but just sharing my experience and how much easier this made getting dressed for me in the past year. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it was a bit off topic from meal prep and meal planning, but I do think that it's similar in the way that it's a service that really helped me to save time. I didn't have to think about getting dressed. So if you want to feel the same way about not having to think about meals, just like let someone else do it. Remember that we have that 2-week free trial. It's prepdish.com/MPM for 2 weeks free, trying out all of our different meal plans, seeing if it's a fit for you. If you are a longtime listener to this podcast and you've not left a rating and review, I would just love if you could do that. That just helps other people to find our podcast. I really appreciate seeing the ratings and reviews come through. Again, it just helps the podcast to keep going. Okay, well, that is all I have for this week. I will be back next week wrapping up this mini series on house management, talking just one more time about clothing, probably the last time I'll talk about clothing for quite a while, but I have just a few more thoughts. So I'll be back again next Monday with another episode.